Somebody said, how do I make Warcraft animation from scratch? Excuse me, in the Matrix Eater. So what we're going to do today is we're going to add some kind of hotkey. I was thinking like Control W or something. That's going to have one of these actions. It's basically going to give us an animation from scratch utility, basically, where we need to have a bone link action that's going to be called bone linker, right? Or like rig action. Rig action. It's rig. So the idea is we need to be able to rig the model. It's already in there right now, but the problem is in order to rig it, you have this annoying pop-up window, right? Waste of time. Okay, you don't want to have this pop-up window. Total waste of time. We're just going to work around that. So basically, this is the rig action right here, right? So the whole idea being that when you press Control W, you want to do this rig action, right? And we need to then name this the rig action. And we're just going to put in here. So once you have this concept of rig action, right, you have to just define what is a rig action. What does that do? So we're going to go to the model editor interface here, right, and we're going to have like an undo action that is like the rig, right? It does the rigging. Now the problem with this, this creates a bunch of compile errors because you have to define how can you do that action with each different type of selection mode, right? You might be selecting faces, you might be selecting vertices, I don't know, but we just got a rig, so we don't care about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this undo action thing, right? And we'll just go to like one of these types of actions that we have, maybe like a tool. And we're going to make a rig action down here, right? And the whole idea being that it's going to extend this undo action, right? Some kind of action that you can do or undo. So the problem with the rig action is that you have to have right, like a list of what are all the currently selected bones you're going to rig to, and what are all the currently selected vertices you're going to rig onto those bones. So we're going to have a list of vertices, right, called the vertices. Maybe we'll even call it selected vertices, right? That's even a clearer name. And then we're going to have a list of bone. That's going to be the selected bones list. All right, so that's pretty good. These are going to be, yeah, it's going to be my bone class. We're not going to use like some other idiot's bone class. All right. So we do that, and we get these lists, and basically one of the keys here is that we need to be able to instantiate a new array list regarding this, because you're going to be editing external forces might change like what the list is. So we're snapshotting the value right at the very start of when this is created. When you do that, then you can say that your selected bones and your selected vertices could be any arbitrary kind of collection just from the collection mechanism. So I mean, this is supposed to be really, really easy, right? This is the action name, of course, is rig. To redo a rig, like the concept of what we're doing is actually gets even better than this. Rather than vertex, we're going to make them a list of geoset vertices, right? I guess we could do vertices. Let's do, well, okay, we'll do vertices, but there's this trick here, right? So for every vertex in the list of vertices, and if you go to a professor and you ask him how should I code, he'll tell you don't code like this. But the key is, we just want to say if the vertex is an instance of a geoset vertex, right? And if it is, if this thing we're looking at is a geoset vertex, then what you can do is you can, I think, add bone attachment, right? This is, of course, actually stupid because we don't want to add a bone attachment. We want to set what bone that vertex is attached to. So to that end, we want to just set it to a new list. It would be our selected bones list. Now the question is, can anybody ever modify our list of selected bones? They do. They do sometimes modify this list, and this is a direct pointer assignment. So because of that, right, we want to make a list of bone just as a backup, right, a new bone list. Very simple, but you have to do that. Once you do that, right, then you have your list. The idea being you can give that list to the vertex, to all the vertices. They can all have the same list. Actually, I take it back. They shouldn't all have the same list because they're going to modify their own unique list because it's designed badly. So we'll do that. We'll make one of these lists. And then, of course, the key being this needs to be a new list made from the list of selected bones, which will never change. So that's great and kind of terrifying, right? I mean, your professor wouldn't like that. But you know what? I like it because it works. So we do that. We loop through all the bones, and we assign them all. Now, the problem is, in order to undo it, you have to have a snapshot per vertex of what they all were in the past, right? That's much, much harder. That's going to require a mapping from a vertex to a list of bones. Not like really hard to do here, right? It's not rocket science, but we're going to have vertex to prior bone attachment. And to do that, essentially, of course, we're just going to use the actual map class. This vertex is going to equal a new map. Then my auto suggest is going to lag for a second, but obviously we're going to use a hash map. So we have our vertex mapping to prior bone. Now what we're going to do is say for vertex in selected vertices, right? If vertex is instance of geoset vertex. Very simple concept. Unfortunately, there's this subclass of vertex that has all the bone information linked onto it. So we have to do that. We check and see if it's a geoset vertex, and if it is, then what we're going to do is we're going to do get bone attachments. We're going to get that list, and then we're going to say vertex to prior bone attachment, and we're going to put in the vertex, and we're going to put in a new array list created, snapshotting the values, again because external forces in this program, the paradigms are bad, right? It's designed a long time ago, are going to modify that list. So you do that, and now you have this list, and what that means you can do is an undo. You can go through all of them, and you can say, this guy, get your list. What is your list for your previous guy? Get the list, and then if the list is non-null, that's when you can say, and if it's one of these guys, then you set bones to that list, right? So we do that, okay, and we have to snapshot it again because once it gets stuck on the vertex, the external forces might modify it, which is horrifying. But what that means is we have this concept of rig action, right? Rig action is great. This is great for us because now what we can do is we can go back to the model editor interface and we can actually cheat a little bit and we can go on rig and we can say that rig returns a rig action. This allows us the ability to say that you can also make a rig action out of other rig actions, right? This is going to come up, and this is going to be really important for us because of the concept of the model editor notifier. Basically, I made this stupid program too complicated, but it doesn't really matter. We're just going to make a set of rig actions that we're going to pass in to the rig action, right? And what that's going to mean is that you can rig all your nodes, absolutely all of them, and effectively, we're just going to instantiate these lists as being new lists, right? So we do that. They're going to begin empty, and then for rig action other in rig actions, right? We're going to loop through all those. I don't know why this is upset. It's because we need to make this mapping structure. So we do that for all the other rig actions. Selected vertices, add all other selected vertices, right? So if you're combining rig actions, you can do that. Selected bones, add all of other.selected bones. Again, very, very simple concept. And then we do the same logic here, which we could probably methodize to be load undo data, right? So we load the undo data. A really good IDE would have automatically methodized this one as well. I guess I just didn't click on the thing. So we do that. So we have the ability to construct a rig action from other rig actions, right? So what that means is that if I'm in like a face editor, so I'm in face select mode, right? We can define that we're going to make a rig action out of that, and for that, it should be really simple because we can just give it a list of selected vertices. And so for that, we can say get what do they call this? This is not supposed to be hard. Selection manager get selected vertices, right? And what that'll do is within the faces that are selected, it'll get the set of all selected vertices, and then we can also say collections.empty list for the other list, right? Now what's the issue here? Empty list bone. It's an empty list of bones. Are there any bones? So, like, really, we can't empty list bone. Okay, we got an empty list bone right here. No. Really, we got to import bone. Come on. Capture extends vertex. Really? So this has to be question extends vertex. All right, I'll buy what they're selling. That's true. All right, great. So we have that. You know what? While we're at it, let's give this one question extends bone. It really doesn't matter. We just need our generic types to line up. So we do that on the face model editor, and then that's when we realize that actually this rig action, right? Now I accidentally clicked the selection manager. This rigging that's happening, we could just put in the abstract model editor and be done with all of them, right? Except for one. the pivot point model editor, right? Which this guy, he can't do that same thing. It doesn't make sense. So the pivot point model editor has to have a special rig behavior. And this is where our IDE is supposed to give us an auto-suggest, right? Like an auto-suggest regarding rig of rig action, right? And so we should be able to define rig here, and it's not doing it. So we're just going to pull in this one, say to heck with them. So they're just going to stop being stupid. And we'll get one of these. So this time what we're going to do is empty list of vertices, because there aren't any like geoset vertices, right, in this pivot point selection thing. And the idea there is, if you are selecting pivot points, right, then what you want to do is you want to get the list of all selected objects. So for that, we loop through. I guess this just needs to be selected. So there's of course this design flaw that I called nodes ID object, which is just really stupid. But we'll just make a list of selected ID objects that are actually bones. Now we can say we go through all the objects if it's selected, and then again if object instance of bone, right? And this gives us this whole idea where we can make totally sure that we can add object as a bone to the selected list of bones. We put that in there, right? And so this is actually selected bones. You do that, and then you can go to the notifier, and you can say in the notifier, okay, notifier, you need the ability to rig, you're right. So the notifier wants to be able to rig. The way that he does it, right, is that he needs to have a list of rig action that are all of his rig actions. So he's going to build this list from an array list, okay, and then he's going to loop through every model editor that he knows about in his set of model editors, and he's going to say rig actions dot add that thing rigging its subrig, and then we're going to make a new rig action, right? And we set this up for ourselves deliberately, so we can say to array, we can make a new rig action array whose length is equal to rig action's size, just so we make sure we have the right sizing on there. So you do that, right? Now you have the ability to rig anything, and then you have to go to the animation editor and tell that stupid thing that you can't rig during animation mode, because it doesn't really make any sense, you know? And here's the other problem. The abstract model editor should probably actually be abstract selecting editor. Who uses that? Everybody, or no? Okay, yeah, it is abstract model editor. That's what doesn't make sense to me. There should be another one who extends this. That would be the node animation thing. It's currently anim editor. Here we go. This guy, node animation guy. So basically, the idea of the node animation guy is that you just give them a pop-up that says unable to do that in the animation editor if they ask you to do rigging, right? So you can say unable to rig an animation editor. It doesn't make any sense. Like, don't do that. All right, great. So we put in this rig behavior, right? And what that's going to mean is that we can go into the main panel. We can have this rig behavior. We can also have, maybe in like the tools menu, you know, so when I think about the matrix eater and I think about like this tools menu, you could probably put rig in here for now. Later we'll probably put it somewhere else. That's kind of annoying, but like under simplify keyframes, right? This simplify keyframes button right here. You go to that, you jump down where that's defined, because what we're going to do is we're going to have a rig button. Alright, so you go to simplify keyframes, and we don't need this part. If simplify keyframes menu, okay, rig button, do the same exact thing, right? It's a new menu item that says rig selection, right? And that's the whole idea. It's the rig button. And in the old days, I would set these mnemonics. I'm not actually sure these even work, but you know, we'll put an R for rig, and then rig button, add action listener, rig action. So you know, if you click that button, it's going to do rigging. And then we'll put it in the tools menu. On tools menu, we'll add the rig button, right? With this idea that we're going to be able to rig the model. That's great, but now we have to go back to rig action and redefine what that guy does, because he used to be doing expand selection. Now instead he's going to be doing rig, because I copied expand selection to create that behavior. So what this means is that now we have the potential to rig the model. Now there's one other thing we need, right? We also need the ability to say that we can add bones. So this gets into like the other problem, right? If I'm gonna get, this should always be number one. All right, if I'm gonna get the bones, I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna get those bones. As it were, if I go in here and I say File New and I make a new model and I create a model that's empty, you can hit Vertex and you can place little vertices, right? Which is of course totally crazy. But what you can't really easily do is place a little bone, right? So now what we need to do is we'll go to the button that says Vertex on it, or Face from Selection. Wherever this panel is, we're going to have to find that. This Creator Modeling panel, this guy right here, has a button, Vertex button, right? So we're just going to make another one. It's not a Java project. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Creator Modeling panel, okay? Vertex button. This is a Java project, thank you. Right? We're going to make a mode button. Great, now I can auto-suggest again. We got to the correct one. We're going to make a button that is the bone button. Right? And eventually, we're gonna have to make this more complicated because your bone is going to need a name. It's absolutely going to need a name, right? I mean, without a name, you're stabbing yourself in the foot if you don't have a name on there. But we can live with it. We can live with it. So here's our little bone button. We have a button that places little bones. And what you're going to do is you just look at the Vertex button, right? And you just say, Draw Tools panel, add the bone button. And we got to figure out what else do we do with this Vertex button. It looks like we add an action listener. It does some junk. And we add it to the mode buttons. So the idea here being that you could do the same thing, and we change the activity to a draw vertex activity descriptor. This, of course, is key because we just want to have draw vertex activity descriptor. We're going to copy that and have one called draw bone activity descriptor, right? So draw bone activity descriptor should be pretty easy to do. As well as draw vertex activity, we're going to have a draw bone activity. It's this idea that you're just going to click and it's going to place bones into space, right? So we're going to have a draw bone activity. There's a whole bunch of garbagey code on here. But for the most part, we have our location stuff, and then we have model editor add vertex. So we just copy this and put add bone. That again has implementation dependent ways of behaving. But if we look at add vertex, if we look at who implements this in abstract model editor, add vertex, it looks like some of these guys, they do it in different ways. This guy adds one here. It looks really way more complicated than I would have thought it needs to be. What if we're in face mode? It just says you can't. You have to do it in vertex mode. Okay, well that makes sense, I guess. So for that, I guess that makes this really easy. But realistically, we might want to add a bone in any mode. So let's just go to the abstract. At this guy, I actually level above this guy. I actually level below that guy. Abstract model editor, right? We'll just go to this one and we'll just say add bone, right? And the concept here being, now I can click to add a bone. So to do that, we're going to want to have draw vertex action. We got to clone this and make draw bone action. It's just going to be really simple. Draw bone action. I mean, you just put a bone in here, right? It's not hard. Okay, you also gotta have a model. So to do that, let's take a model view, and it'll be like our model file because we actually need to put the bone in the model file. Make sure we get the right bone thing there. Now let's assign the model view. So mostly, what you want to do is model view dot add. Where's model view manager? Is that the one that has like add bone? No. Model view state notifier or listener. Maybe that's what we need. It's a state listener, actually. So we definitely need the model view, but I think we also need the model view state listener. This, of course, is a little bit obnoxious as far as coding goes, But the reason is, the reason here, it's not supposed to be as complicated as it seems like it is. Once you add a bone, you got to tell the world of the GUI that you've added a bone. Otherwise, the rendering animation mechanisms go crazy in actively animated animations. They use cached information that needs to know to update. So when we put one of these bones in here, right, we're just going to go model view dot get model dot add. We're just going to add the bone into the model, right? It makes total sense. And then it's after that you have to do this extra step. We're going to say model view state listener. Object visible. Wait, it's actually not supposed to be the state listener. There's one of these that like calls on the state listener to tell him that it became visible, and it's been a while since I did this. So this manager make object visible. Okay, great. That one. Editability handler. Make object visible. Who calls that? Selecting editor. Show component. Okay. Make editable action. So I guess you could have like an action of making it editable. In my case, if we add it, it might as well become editable, you know? I mean, that's just common sense. So I guess that would be something that we would do. That's true. So in draw bone action, we actually are probably going to also have a either final make editable action, right? That is a make bone editable. And it's silly, but basically this make bone editable is going to equal new make bone editable action. So what we need here, I guess, is an editability toggle handler. This being the idea that we can give that to the make editable action, who knows how to handle making the bones editable on the screen and all that crap. So we do that, right? And we're going to do that, and then we can say we have this model view state listener is going to be gone. We don't need him anymore. So when we do redo this, we're going to add the bone. And after we add the bone, we're going to say redo making the bone editable, which is just literally a make editable action with an editability toggle or handler, of which there are several. But who creates these? Who creates one of these? Nothing. Nothing ever creates. That's weird. How can that possibly be the case? That can't be the case. Okay. Anybody ever create one of these? No. They really don't. Alright, so I guess it's going to be this checkable element. State changed. Great. So maybe when something adds a bone, let's see if this actually says, do we have object visible? No. Alright, well, I got a new idea for you, folks. This is way more complicated than this is supposed to be. This just needs model structure change listener. That's what I actually meant to do. I was thinking, I'm like, this can't be this complicated. That's broken. It's not supposed to be. We just need a model structure change listener. That is what we do, okay? Because the structure of the model is changing. That's what I was trying to say. This is the guy we're looking for, where we can just say node added, right? And we can just give him, can I give him a single node? Is this single node added? Or we have to say nodes added? Alright, that's really dumb. Let's see. Singleton list. Sure, of the bone. This is going to be bone as list, right? So that way, you want to be sure that we can make the list of nodes that were added, so we can give that to this guy basically and just say, hey, we added this bone as a list. What does it require? Okay, this is an ID object list now. Great. So we do that, so we have bone as a list, and then we remove, and then say nodes removed. And that's otherwise the same, get model remove bone, and then we're going to say nodes removed to notify the graphical information and all of that that we removed that particular node. That was way harder than it should have been, but you know, whatever. let's see, bone name. So you have a bone's name on there too, so we'll just say add bone by name. So that's the draw bone activity. Now that was crazy. That was just crazy. That should never be that hard. All right, add vertex here is going to take geoset vertex. So we're going to copy this, right? But the key is also going to be when we add a bone. What are we going to do? This gets back to model editor, actually. So in model editor, add bone. We don't need this other junk, right? We're just XYZ right here. So nobody implemented that yet, right? Because I need to go to the abstract model editor. I just scroll down here and go back to where we have add bone. I'm going to say, okay, let's make a new add bone action. Oh yeah, here's another problem with the rig action, right? Problem with the rig action. We never called redo on it. So that's just the model editor notifier in rig. Once you create your rig action, it's the sum of all the rig actions. Really what you want to do is you want to actually do the rigging. So rig action dot redo. It's like redoing it. It's causing it to happen. So we do that. Anyway, when we add a bone, it's going to be a draw bone action. And that's going to take this guy's model, it's going to take the structure change listener, and it's going to take a new bone that we're going to create, right? And so for that, we're going to make this bone called bone01 or something like that. But we can't actually do 01. That's not good enough, right? Because you want the name to be a name that was never used before. So to do that, let's just like loop through number names, right? Number-based names. Do you have any kind of like number util, like string util? That is not good. All right. Basically, what we want to do is have name number, which would start at 1, and then we want to have a function that's going to say get the set of all names. Something kind of dumb, maybe. Set of all names. All bone names, right? It's a set of all bone names. And basically what we're going to do is we're just going to take model.get model. We'll get the list of all the nodes in the model. And we're going to say, if I go through this list of all the nodes in the model, right? Let's just add the object and all of its names, right? So we make sure we have the set of all the names, and we have the name number, and then we say while names contains, let's call it like bone plus name number, then name number plus plus. Get it? And that way we can say bone plus name number is going to equal our guy. Should be pretty good. I was thinking maybe I had like some kind of utility that I had used in the past for creating number-based names. So for that, I guess we'll go to name panel. We'll look for the string 0. There we go. Right here. Awesome. So this would be our number name that we're looking for here, actually. And basically, I was just thinking we want to have like an access to that as some kind of like little utility, right? Get number name, string name, int number, and we're going to return name plus all this crap where we give it the number. And so it'll be like bone 001, bone 002, right? That's deliberate. Alright, we're going to do that. And we're going to say get number name. And that way I can just do get number name on name number. And on bone is the default name. So later, someday, maybe you'll get to choose those names. Ideally, that would be what we'd be doing. But we're not doing that right now because it's probably a waste of time. So we have this bone, we have the draw bone action, and it sticks a bone in there, and it'll just do an increasing name value, right? So just like bone 1, bone 2, bone 3. So we do that, and then we have to ask ourselves, can we get also a good way? This is like the basics of rigging, and we have this Control W thing that kind of makes this happen, but there's more than that we want to do. We also want to have like drawing attachments between bones that we have, right? You place two of them, you like draw a line from one to the next, and they become like linked to each other. So we're going to have to add that, but I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. So first, now that we have add bone, we want to make sure that add bone correctly does the adding of the bone. So for that, we instantiate this bone, and we have this draw bone action. But like we saw last time, once you have your action, there's this really hacky thing. You just call redo on it to make it happen when it's first created. Ideally, we want to end up someday having a better system than that, but that's what we have right now. So we do that. Now we have this notifier, which is going to have some concept of a compound action with merge actions here. So for this is a fairly standard piece of code that we're going to paste that's better than the previous one, where this is just going to be add bone, and we're going to give it XYZ. So you do that, and you have the add bone action, right? Shouldn't be very difficult. It's just adding, and this merges, so like if you're editing in two different spaces at once, we'll only be adding one bone, right? It would be stupid to add two of them. Which does point out that we probably want adding a bone to do nothing unless you're in the pivot point model editor mode. That way, we'll just make this do a wrong mode exception that says enable to add bone outside of pivot point editor. But the pivot point editor is actually always active, so that doesn't really matter because we can just go to pivot point model editor and we can just paste down here. If we override add bone, this doesn't want to do overrides for me anymore. This is making me really, really, really sad. Why would they make this not suggest an override? That is just, it's preposterous. Like add bone, okay, public undo action, add bone. I've got my other thing on my clipboard, right? So I can't I can't take their crap right now, right? We're just gonna give this double X, double I, double Z. Why would they make it not suggest overrides? Who are these people? What are you doing with your life? Okay, that's not what I wanted to copy out of that. I did that wrong. I'm gonna copy this one. So we get number name. We're gonna put that in here because it was supposed to be here all along. So now you have the ability to get a number name. Now everything's happy, all the red goes away, except stupid animation mode, who's the retarded cousin. And then you go to the retarded cousin and you tell him that if somebody asks you to add a bone, just say enable add bone in animation editor, right? Don't do that. Don't try to add a bone while you're editing animations. Like, add all the bones and then do the animations, okay? Don't. Be smart. Okay, so we've got that, but that's our draw bone action. What we don't have yet is the correct setup of the draw bone activity descriptor. So I had draw vertex activity. We're going to change that now. It's draw bone activity. But you have to ask yourself, what is a draw bone activity, right? So activity is a concept of the user interaction with the space. And so that's saying when you click, we're going to have model editor add bone as the action that actually takes place in here when you're doing the clicking in the space, right? So when you do the clicking in the space, it's going to place that bone that you're placing, and whatever else is just going to be the default. So we're going to put that in so you can make some bones, and now all we need is the ability to do a linking from one bone to the next. And for that, basically I think what we want to do, that's going to be a little bit harder actually, because we want to say that you're going to like draw from one to the next. We probably won't do that yet. Let's not do that yet. So let's see what we got in terms of whether things are good or not. The key, of course, being that if we go back in the creator modeling panel, activity descriptors, right? We have to find our activity descriptors because draw plane, draw box, and then we have draw vertex twice, presumably. And I'm going to say, no, we don't need draw vertex twice. We will not be doing that. We will be drawing, where the heck is vertex button? Come back to me, vertex button. Here we go. We have draw vertex activity, but if you click on the bone button, it's going to draw bone activity, right? So I'm drawing bones. So this gets to, what am I trying to do? Okay, let me show you what I'm trying to do, right? we want to have some kind of model from scratch. We're going to call this Mr. Fudge Face. I don't care what he's called. And I mean, basically, what we want to have is the oh, this thing is screwed up. Why did it do that? It's just silly. We have the ability to draw a box. So Mr. Fudge Face is like this guy. He's got like a leg made of 2 boxes. Okay, that's a terrible box. He's got a leg made of a smaller box. Okay, this is Mr. Fudge Face. Welcome to Earth, Mr. Fudge Face. So the idea is Mr. Fudge Face has these boxes. But the problem is these boxes need bones. Mr. Fudge Face needs some bones. So we're building Mr. Fudge Face's body because he's going to have his body here. And then he has like some arms. But Mr. Fudge Face needs to have some animations, you know? That's what he needs to have. So let's go ahead and give him that. So this is Mr. Fudge Face's body, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and give him a series of bones. I'm able to add bone outside of pivot point editor. So apparently we have to save Mr. Fudge Face and go back in our code for a second because of a bug that negative array size. Well, aren't you great? Isn't that great? Negative array size. What a junk. I'm able to add bone outside of pivot point editor. Really? You really think that's a good idea? Okay. Model editor notifier. I thought you knew how to merge actions better than that. And there's supposed to be a try catch around some of these actions with a try catch. I thought there was. Yeah, there is. Try catch with a wrong mode exception. It's supposed to be like that. Okay. That's how it's supposed to be. Wrong mode exception. We're going to ignore it. So, Mr. Fudge Face is lost to us. He's dead to us. We're going to have to make another Fudge Face. So, okay, Mr. Fudge Face 2. That's really a letdown. So, let me do this more carefully. We're going to make a box first, right? We're going to go to standard box, and we're just going to have 2 boxes that represent the legs, right? What is this? What are you doing? Get out of here. Nothing to undo. Okay, yes you do. You have something to undo. Alright. We're going to put one of these, and we're going to put one of these. There's like the 2 legs. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure, we're going to make absolutely sure that I can just go in here and put the, oh, and they don't even go to where I clicked on. It's great. Why is that? Why don't they go where I clicked on? Bone 0, bone 1? They should absolutely go to where I clicked on. They always go to 0. That's just broken. That's just horribly broken. Why would it do that? Why would it do that? It should not do that. So this would be the draw bone activity giving me the wrong XYZ, right? From this concept of this location calculator who's trying to figure out, based on my mouse event, what's the X and Y where I clicked. And somehow, when we add this, we don't go where I tell them to go, which is just horrifying. And the reason for that is that I didn't do bone.setPivotPoint to a new vertex point that is XYZ. Of course, it makes a lot of sense to me. So I do that, I have this pivot point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to finally make Mr. Fudge Face, and he is going to be for real this time. So let's go ahead and make Mr. Fudge Face. Okay, so he's got like a little leg down here, and these are his feet actually. I think these are his feet. Because now we got to put the legs over top of those, right? And those are his legs, and this is his other leg. And actually, let's be a little bit smart. We could probably avoid. Well, maybe that's too fancy. All right, we're not going to be very fancy. We're just going to try to make his body. So there's bodies. Here's his arm. Here's his other arm, right? And here's his forearm. There's that. There's the other forearm. Here's going to be his head. So now that we have Mr. Fudge Face's body, let's try giving him some bones. So basically what you do is you click on his body, you make the bones, okay, and then you make 2 for the feet. And then at this point, this is where I click W to go back to selection mode, right? And then I'm going to rename this. So this is bone underscore chest, right? And this is going to be bone underscore pelvis. And then this is going to be bone leg 1L. And this is going to be bone leg 1R. And then this is going to be bone foot R. And this will be bone foot L. And this will be bone arm 1L. And this will be bone arm 2L. And this will be bone arm 1R. And this will be bone arm 2R. Right? And then this is bone head. So that's pretty good, right? That's a good start. You can see I have all my nodes. It's always good to save your work. So this is the real Mr. Fudgeface, but he still isn't going to save. And let me tell you why. Okay, what we need to do is we need to go in here and we need to use our Control W command to W these things. That basically is informing it that we should be rigging them. And once we rig them, we're going to stop crashing on save, and we're going to be able to save because the crash is happening because this thing wasn't written to handle an unrigged model. Now that we've rigged with this Control W command that I added, the point is I can go in here and say, okay, let's create a stand animation, right? You want to be able to do that. It's going to be looping. It's going to have length 1000. That's a fine length for a stand animation. And then you can push OK on that. But basically, and I guess we got to make sure we're editing stand. Then you get to this point where you can start to say, what should all of our keyframes be? So it's generally good practice to put a keyframe at the start that's just all your stuff, and probably one at the end also. And then part of the way through, right, you want to start to move things around. But we have another problem. We're used to Warcraft models, everything should be a tree, everything should be linked. It's not linked yet, right? So let's go back out of animation mode. Let's make sure that we set the parent of the left hand to like the upper left, right? We're going to set this thing's parent to the chest, right? We're going to set this thing's parent to be the chest. Actually, I could have shift selected those, right? So don't select one at a time. We can select 2 here and set these to the pelvis. We can set the pelvis and the head to link to the chest. So in this model, the chest is actually going to be the root of everything. The feet have to be done individually because it's going to be like leg 1L. Some Warcraft models are going to have like 2 legs, right? Leg 2 or leg 1R, and then this guy has to link to arm 1 or arm 2R, which actually, wait a second, needs to be arm 1R. There we go. This guy should also go to the chest. I should have got him when I was doing grouping. So now that we do that, we can go back to animation mode, and this is where it gets really good because you see when I click a part of him, we have the yellow dots that indicate that we have a concept of the skeleton. So for that, we can say that halfway through the stand animation, we're going to move him downward a little bit. But you probably want to move him from the chest because that's the root of everything, right? Move him downward a little bit. But then what you can do is you can use the squatting tool, which lets you make him sort of squat one way or the other. And if you use that, you should also be able to sort of squat his feet a little bit. So then he'll be doing that. So suddenly you get to where you can have like your stand animation where he's kind of squatting. Unfortunately, then you'll find that my root position on these things was not correctly made. So let's make another animation that's going to be called walk, right? But when we go to walk, he's in the root position. So let's just select all keyframes and copy the frame of the whole entire model. And for that way I can go to stand and make sure that stand begins correctly. Because what we found is stand lost, it forgot how it had started, and it did that because there weren't any keyframes for rotation. I tried to create a frame for everything, but I was still on translation. So now we have this guy where he can do like a stand where he's actually moving, right? So we put that in, but we still have to do walk, right, and some of these other things. So then we go to walk animation. And for walk, the key is going to be, you want to be able to have his legs kind of like do the squatting tool again, right? So first off, let's go to rotation, right? We'll go to rotation mode. We select everything. So rotation is great. Warcraft lives by rotation, and we're just going to tag the start and the end of this again with keyframes because we don't really want to derp around. Although with walk we might end up changing that, but let's see how we do. So if we use the squatting tool, you can move the leg without messing up the foot, right? So we can move this leg, and we can move that leg. And also, you know, maybe you could move this a little bit one way or the other, although I'm not exactly sure if that's a good idea. We could even try to like rotate this, although maybe, can we squat rotate? Yeah, we can. Yeah, we do like that. So he's like forward a little bit, right? And then of course the key is going to be, if you're on the start of the model, you want to end the same. So we're going to have walk kind of do this, and then it's in the middle of walk, right? You want to have the legs move the opposite way. So for that, we're still going to be doing the squatting tool. I selected both of them. You don't want to do that. You want to move them one at a time, right? So you kind of have them do this, and so that way, hopefully, you can kind of get to where your walk animation is going to kind of walk a little bit. Now, obviously, this is my first time using this because I pretty much just wrote it, but you know, it's a step forward, right? It's kind of, you can see our goal. You can definitely see our goal. Let's make him lean a little less backward here, and we can copy that frame. Since I didn't do copy frame, I just did copy. It's only editing that chest bone right there. So now he's doing that. You might also want to have his arms do a little bit. You know, maybe use that same kind of like squatting kind of rotation on those guys. Obviously, they're not like notified very well. So like if you were really good at this, you would actually want this thing's root position to be here, because that's like the fulcrum of motion or something. I don't really know about that. Like I said, I just wrote this, so I've never used it before, but you know, maybe you'll learn how to use it. There you go. That looks a little bit more like a guy walking. You know, I mean, not a lot, but like a little bit, right? So now he just needs some kind of like attack and like spell animation. So we'll just do that. So let's go ahead and I guess we'll just duplicate. Well, let's not duplicate stand because we need it to be non-looping. So we're gonna make attack, which is gonna be a non-looping animation, because you know you gotta have one of those. And if we go to attack, then the key is going to be, again, let's do. Oh, I accidentally moved front over here. Don't do that. We'll put it back. Key is going to be in the start of this that you're going to want to have the ability with the rotation-y stuff here to say snapshot that, and then during attack, like, let's see, I guess we need to also snapshot the end on everything probably. So during attack, what I'm thinking we would do, I'll just use rotate here, is he's going to want to move one of his arms up, right? Like, I'm right-handed, now he's right-handed. That sounds good to me. We're going to move this arm, we're going to say that, oh, I think that went backwards, didn't it? Yeah, let's go forwards. So let's go forwards and then say that, like, this arm's going to kind of reach out and do, like, a jab, you know? Just kind of like that. So that's his attack, right? He's like, pow. It's not a very good attack, you know? I mean, maybe also you want him to lean into it a little bit. So for that, let's try to use the squatting tool on his main body again. That seemed like that was kind of successful. You could do this, but of course also, then if we're careful and we leave a translation keyframe at the start and end, then you can go ahead and you can use move, and we can say that when he does lean like this, we're going to be moving his center point so he looks better. So now you can see he's like leaning into this attack like a little chop that he's doing. That's pretty good. And this is where, if you want to be really fancy, what you can do is you duplicate attack to make a spell animation. But of course, in your spell animation, you got to have him do something like even more fancy. You know, like maybe in the middle of the spell animation, right here, yeah, like right here, he's gonna rotate a little bit. But actually, let's do a squat rotate. It's funnier that way. So he does kind of a squat rotate, and then you gotta kind of keep him in place there. You do that, and then the key to the spell animation too is going to be you want some kind of particle on his hand, right? So for that, we're just going to do this add particle button, and I don't know if we want like weapon magic flat emitter. Let's do weapon magic flat emitter. So we're going to call this spell anim particles. It's going to be on his right hand. So I have an arm 2R because I didn't put in a hand thing. And we're going to choose when to show. We're going to only leave spell animation checked. So it's only going to be in the spell animation. and this is going to be, this is a green particle. So let's make it like all the shades of green in here. Just the greenest green, you know, like forest green. So it's got this green particle, and it's going to automatically insert on his hand because we chose bone arm 2R, but it's over here. It's not actually his hand. So that's where we want to go to our little node tree, right? And we're just going to like toggle off everything, toggle on this little emitter, and that way we can drag it to actually be on his hand. So once you do that, we don't actually have particle emitters rendering in here yet. I got to add that, but we'll see it in game, right? So now we can go ahead and we can have Mr. Fudgeface. We can go ahead and save him again, and we can put him in the world editor. Now here I had some of the test map, but let's make Mr. Fudgeface his own map, right? He's a pretty cool guy. So we're gonna go ahead and put Mr. Fudgeface in his own map, and you can see, as far as the question of can I make animations in the Matrix Eater, the animation or the answer to the question is gonna be yes. That's what we're gonna see here is yes. We made some animations for Mr. Fudgeface. So for that, he's got a spell animation, so we can copy a footman to make Mr. Fudgeface. Now I have no idea like if he's the right size. It looks like he's a little bit big, but you know, the best people in life are a little bit big, right? So here you go. Here's Mr. Fudgeface, and he's got his stand, you know, he's got his walk, he's got his attack, and then he's got spell where he's got that green flat emitter on his hand that we put in there. So you can see that is Mr. Fudgeface. Let's go ahead and try him in game. But then he needs a spell to be casting, right? So we need to make sure he has like infinite mana because we don't want that getting in our way. So we'll do that, and we'll give him some kind of really cool ability like what do you guys think is a good one? I think Chain Lightning. I'm gonna mood for Chain Lightning. We'll give him some Chain Lightning on there. And that's Mr. Fudgeface, right? So he's gonna be called Fudgeface, and we can go take him and we can kind of duke it out with some of our opponents over here, which will of course not be as cool. They'll just be some like, basic footmen or something. We'll make them like hostile. Great. So we do that. We probably don't really want the game to give us annoying victory pop-ups. So we'll save this map, Mr. Fudgeface map. As you can see, we will have created animations like spell, like these other things, in the Matrix here. Here I have Mr. Fudgeface, and he has the ability to walk around, right? So he's animated. Mr. Fudgeface is now an animated guy, and we just made this out of nothing, right? But the concept is that you could actually you could make not only animations like where you use the model that you already had. So like I did this with a model that I created while we're talking, but you could do this with a model that you already had. Now of course I'm going to run away with Mr. Fudgeface a little bit because I want to keep seeing my spell animation and not just challenge them with my basic attack, which is nowhere near as good. Although let's try the basic attack to see that attack animation, right? You got to see that in there. It's like toof, toof. He's doing his little Fudgeface punch, you know. Now let's get some lightning on there, and you see that green glow on his hand because we clicked that add particle emitter button, right, to add a spell emitter and a spell animation. So that's an example of the kind of animation that you could add in the Matrix Eater. And so hopefully that'll make your life a little easier. As you can see, half of what I did I was only able to do with code that I just wrote for this video right now. But going forward, you know, that's kind of the goal of what you're going to be able to do, and we're going to keep adding to that code as time goes on. So this should be pretty good, just in terms of how things go here. All right, I think I can beat this one footman, right? Don't you think I can beat him? Yeah, look at that. Mr. Fudgeface is victorious. Woo, woo. See, that's why his arms are like this, so he can go like this to cheer as he walks around. It's like his little victory dance. Doop, 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 doop. So, if you've ever seen a video of Makura Rave, it's the same thing, right? I used the same software, and I made this Makura dance because I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we can make the Makura dance? And you can totally do this, right? So I took this guy, and I made it that he has, you know, there's his old animation, spell, right? But I gave him like, okay, stand upgrade dance apparently doesn't work. But I gave him like this ability to go in one part of the movie, and another one where he's like, right? And you have to have that. And then you gotta have the stand victory. He's like, and all of this is just the same like squatting tool on the legs there, right? And stuff like that. So basically, you just go in there and you just draw your animations up and you do whatever you need. So yeah. That's a good animation tutorial, and I hope you have a good day.